The last thing Daniel Carter did before leaving the company he had served for 30 years was place a plain white envelope on his CEO's desk. He didn't slam the door. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't beg for another chance. He simply looked at the woman who had just ended 3 decades of his life with a few cold words, placed the envelope beside her laptop, and walked away carrying a cardboard box filled with everything he had left at the office. What the CEO didn't know was that the envelope contained something that would force her to question not only the decision she had made that morning, but the entire way she had lived her life. If you believe kindness, loyalty, and second chances still matter, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional YK stories like this one. Daniel had started working for Hartwell Industries when he was just 24 years old. Back then, the company occupied a small brick building with fewer than 50 employees. Daniel was hired as a junior maintenance technician, the kind of employee most executives never noticed. But Daniel showed up early, stayed late, fixed problems nobody else wanted to touch, and treated every person in the building with the same quiet respect. Over the years, he became the man everyone called when something went wrong. He repaired broken equipment, helped new employees find their way, and once spent an entire winter night at the office after a heating system failed because he knew hundreds of employees would arrive the next morning to a freezing building. Life outside the company had not been nearly as kind to him. When Daniel was 38, his wife passed away unexpectedly, leaving him alone with their 6-year-old daughter, Emily. Daniel had no wealthy parents to call, no savings large enough to stop working, and no partner to share the burden. So he did what he had always done. He kept going. He worked during the day, cooked dinner at night, helped Emily with homework, attended school events whenever he could, and quietly built a life around making sure his daughter never felt like she was missing something. Many evenings, Emily would fall asleep at the kitchen table while Daniel finished preparing lunches for the next day. By the time Daniel turned 54, Hartwell Industries had grown into a powerful corporation with glass towers, international offices, and executives who arrived in expensive cars. The old leadership had retired, and the company was now run by Victoria Reynolds, a brilliant 40-year-old CEO known for her sharp decisions and ruthless efficiency. She had inherited a profitable business, but she was determined to make it even more profitable. She spoke constantly about cutting costs, increasing productivity, and removing anything she considered unnecessary. Daniel had survived every change the company had ever made. But one Monday morning, an email arrived instructing him to report to the CEO's office. He knew immediately that something was wrong. Victoria sat behind an enormous desk overlooking the city. Daniel stood across from her, still wearing his work badge and the navy shirt he had worn nearly every day for years. She barely looked up before telling him that the company was restructuring. His position, she said, was no longer necessary. Daniel listened quietly as she explained that younger employees could perform similar duties at a lower salary. Then came the sentence that hurt more than anything else. After 30 years, his loyalty was described as a cost the company could no longer justify. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. He thought about the nights he had slept in his car after working late, the Christmas mornings he had come in because a pipe had burst, the equipment he had repaired with his own hands, and the employees he had helped when they were too afraid to ask anyone else. He thought about Emily, now 24, working 2 jobs while finishing her nursing degree. He had been helping pay her tuition, and suddenly that support was gone. Still, Daniel nodded. He thanked Victoria for the opportunity and walked out. In the hallway, several employees saw him carrying his cardboard box. One young receptionist covered her mouth when she realized what had happened. Another employee hugged him and started crying. Daniel smiled and told them not to worry. He didn't want anyone to see how frightened he was. That evening, he sat alone in his small kitchen, staring at a stack of unpaid bills. His hands trembled slightly as he calculated how long his savings could last. He had spent 30 years believing that if you worked hard and remained loyal, life would eventually reward you. Now, at 54, he wasn't sure if anyone would even give him an interview. But Daniel had one thing Victoria didn't know about. During his 30 years at Hartwell, he had kept copies of old maintenance reports, safety inspections, emergency procedures, and handwritten notes documenting problems he had repeatedly warned management about. He hadn't kept them to hurt anyone. He kept them because he believed records mattered. The next morning, Daniel returned to the building one final time. He asked security to let him collect a few personal items from his old locker. Before leaving, he walked to Victoria's office. She looked surprised to see him. Daniel placed the white envelope on her desk. He told her not to open it until he was gone. Then he turned and left. Victoria stared at the envelope for several minutes. Curiosity finally overcame her. Inside was not a resignation letter, a lawsuit, or an angry complaint. It was a handwritten note from Daniel. The note explained that 3 months earlier, he had discovered a serious electrical problem in one of the company's older facilities. He had reported it repeatedly, but the repair had been postponed because of budget cuts. Daniel had also included copies of his reports and the names of employees who had been working near the faulty equipment. At the bottom of the note, he had written one simple sentence: "I don't want anyone to get hurt because I was too angry to warn you." Victoria froze. She immediately called the facility manager and ordered the building evacuated. Engineers were brought in, and within hours they discovered that Daniel had been right. A major electrical failure could have caused a fire. But the envelope contained one more surprise. Daniel had included a letter from his old supervisor, written years earlier, recommending him for a management position. Daniel had never accepted the promotion because it would have required him to relocate, and Emily had been struggling after her mother's death. He had chosen to stay close to his daughter instead. Victoria sat alone in her office that evening, reading the letter again. For the first time, she understood that Daniel hadn't simply been an employee. He had sacrificed opportunities, money, and comfort to protect people who would never know what he had given up. The next morning, Victoria drove to Daniel's home herself. She found him outside repairing an old bicycle. She apologized, not as a CEO protecting the company, but as a human being who had finally realized the value of the person standing in front of her. She offered Daniel his job back with a significant promotion, but Daniel surprised her. He told her he appreciated the offer, yet he had decided not to return to the position he once had. Instead, he wanted to start a small safety consulting business. Victoria asked if there was anything she could do. Daniel looked at her and said there was. He asked her to create a company policy ensuring that long-term employees would never again be treated as disposable simply because they had become expensive. Victoria agreed. Months later, Daniel's consulting company was thriving. Emily graduated from nursing school, and Daniel stood in the audience with tears in his eyes as she accepted her diploma. After the ceremony, Emily hugged her father and whispered that she was proud of him. Daniel smiled and told her that he had only done what her mother would have wanted. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes that loyalty still has value, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters. And before you leave, I have one special request. Comment, "Kindness always matters," if you believe that doing the right thing is still worth it, even when nobody is watching. Because sometimes the person you overlook is the very person holding everything together. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't watching someone regret hurting you. It's walking away with your dignity, choosing kindness when anger would be easier, and building a better life from the pieces they thought they had broken.